Hello, I'm happy to welcome Dave Butler with us today. He's an award-winning author of speculative fiction for middle grade, young adult, and adult. Now he's a founding editor of a new publishing house called Ark Press. Is that the correct way to introduce you, founding editor of Ark Press?
My title, yeah, that's right. My title is senior editor. We have exactly three employees. They're all editors. Editor in chief is Tony Daniel, but yeah, founding editor is not wrong. I'm one of the three founding editors.
Okay, awesome. I want to jump back in history with you for a little bit. Before becoming a novelist, you were a lawyer.
Yeah,
And that's kind of an interesting start. Tell me a little bit about that and why you transitioned from being a lawyer to a novelist.
yeah. So the truth is, Ken, that I wanted to be a novelist from the age of 6, and I never really wanted to be a lawyer. So so when I was young, so my dad is a economics professor.
Okay.
That's his career. And when he would go to economics conferences, he would come back with like a gift for each kid. So he'd be gone for like 4 days, but he'd come back and he'd have a little something, right? The first time I remember this happening was I wasn't 6, I was 8, I think. He brought me a copy of the Silver Jubilee 25th anniversary edition box set of The Lord of the Rings with the Darrell K. Sweet covers. The Hobbit was yellow, The Fellowship was blue, Two Towers was green, and Return of the King was red, right? This little cheap, kind of newsprint quality, nice Darrell K. Sweet cover art though. So I put myself into bed and just basically didn't emerge until I'd read them all. Um, and I remember my dad would even give me vocabulary assignments. So I can't remember if he like paid me $1 if I learned the words or something. But I remember looking up, flummoxed and ayat to learn what those things meant. So and I decided then that I wanted to be a writer of epic fantasy. Um, so I saw myself as a writer all the way through high school. In college, I got interested in the ancient world, in biblical studies, dead languages, and for a time, I thought I might go get a PhD and do that stuff professionally. But then, Ken, what happened is I met this girl and I wanted to get married, and she didn't want to be poor, and that seemed fair. So I didn't go either to get a PhD or to try to write science fiction novels for a living. I went to law school and still a member of the New York Bar. I practiced law full time for 11 years. I was at a big international law firm in London for 5 years and a year in New York. Then I worked in-house at semiconductor manufacturers for 5 years. What happened, my legal career, so the transition is we had a big success. I was chief corporate counsel at a $1 billion manufacturer, and we sold the company. And I had some money that I could do, so I could do whatever I wanted for a little while. And I said, this is the opportunity I'm going to write. And that was in 2010. And so from like summer 2010 until basically early 2013, I just wrote full time and lived off this money. And I got an agent. He took a book around, couldn't sell it. Then he dumped me. I started self-publishing. I wrote a number of the things. I wrote the book that later on got me my second agent and also picked up and got picked up and published by Random House. I wrote the book that later on got picked up by Bain. So a lot of my sort of subsequent career success came out of those 2.5-ish years, just writing like a total wild man with a sense that, there was a clock hanging over me. Money was going to run out and I was going to have to go back and get a job. That time came, and I spent sort of 6 months trying to get a job as a lawyer. But unfortunately, what had happened in the legal market in the meantime is that one or two of the national law firms had dissolved, had broken up. So the job market was flooded with guys who looked just like me. And I was living in the awkward location of Boise, Idaho, applying for jobs in places like Cupertino or Mountain Home or New York, and I could get the interview and I could get the conversations and right and get pretty far along, but they'd always hire somebody they didn't have to move. And by the way, probably somebody who hadn't done the weird thing of taking 2 years out to write novels. So I ended up getting a job as a corporate trainer. I spent 10 years as a corporate trainer. And again, so I had got an agent, lost an agent, was self-publishing, hooked up with an indie publisher. My editing career began kind of in indie publishing. But I was also traveling all the time to go teach classes on basically connecting financial literacy with business performance. So I go into a big, I think theoretically, I'm still doing this, although it's really tapered off. Go into a big company like these are huge Fortune 500 companies. Apple, I've taught Apple, I've taught Nissan. Okay. I've taught at some of the pharma companies that have been in the news a lot recently. Novo Nordisk was a client of mine for a number of years. Ozempic is their big killer product right now. It's attracting a lot of attention. Go into a company and sort of teach a group, look, here's how to read financial statements. Here's what they mean. Here's how it connects to what you actually do. Here's why it matters, right? Here's what's going on. Traveling all the time meant that I had travel resources. I got to keep all the points. So I had lots of free car rentals and free airline tickets and free hotel stays. And so I would use those to travel around to conventions. So at the same time that I was writing and then eventually getting my second agent and then getting publishing deal with Random House and then with Bain, I think the most I ever went to was 22 in a year. That might have been about 2018 or 2019. I also, by the way, went to every time I'd go somewhere, I'd go to Barnes and Noble, all the Barnes and Nobles I could. I mean, there was a day when I had like a Tuesday class in Minnesota, in the Minneapolis area, and then like a Thursday, Friday class in the same area. So I just stayed there, and I went around to like I think there were 14 Barnes and Nobles within the easy driving distance of Minneapolis, St. Paul, including as far away as St. Cloud. So I just spent the whole day driving around, going into every bookstore I could, signing stock, talking to bookstore employees, giving them a free copy of the book. So when that all came to a screeching halt in 2020 with the lockdowns, I visited almost 50% of Barnes and Noble stores.
Oh, wow.
So in a sense, I am still a lawyer. I don't do much. I am still admitted in the New York State Bar. They make it very easy to stay a member and send them a $350 check every 2 years when you live out of state. I do almost nothing with it. I've been corporate training for about 10 years. My editorial career picked up. So what happened is I got published by Wordfire Press. And the reason I approached them is because I was starting to do the convention thing. This must be in like 2014, maybe. I was starting to do the convention thing seriously. And I saw that I needed a way to get to conventions on a regular basis. And Kevin Anderson owns Wordfire Press, and he had a Wordfire booth, a store, which traveled around to conventions. And so I went and pitched them and said, I think you ought to publish my stuff. And they did. And so for, I don't know, well, as long as he, so first of all, Wordfire still publishes me. And for as long as Kevin still owned that store, I traveled around with him going to cons. And when Wordfire needed an acquisitions editor, I said, look, I'll do it. And that was kind of my foot in the door on editing. I did that for, I think, 3 years, acquisitions for Wordfire. And, it was a way to pitch in and help my publisher. Similarly, when Tony Daniel left Bain and they were shorthanded editorially, I volunteered And so I worked as a consulting editor for Bain, I think for 3 years. I have to go back and check these numbers. I think it's basically 3 years each, pretty close to round numbers. These are both basically kind of part-time positions. And then, yeah, Ark started, I mean, we're in week 4. This is the last day of week 4 of Ark Press. So Tony Daniel, who I knew from Bain, reached out and recruited me, and here we are.
Awesome. I want to ask you a little bit more about that later, but
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about your writing career a little bit
Cool.
more. You write a lot of different speculative fiction.
Yeah.
From fantasy, science fiction, horror, dystopian. Do you have a favorite, or why the many different genres?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do have one published thriller novel also. Why the many genres? This is a good question. It's probably worth stipulating that the middle grade and the young adult stuff I've written is also, and there's a sense in which middle grade fiction is genreless because it all goes in the store in the same place.
Yeah.
Right. Like a book with ray guns and a book with cowboys and a book with princesses are all next to each other on the shelf, just alphabetically by author. As it happens, the middle grade I've written is also basically speculative fiction. It's stories about ghosts, or it's stories about boys who don't realize they are robots, or things like that, right? Ken, I don't know the answer to that. This has always attracted me. Maybe there's something about me that likes to. I mean, speculative fiction genres are a way to play with the world. Let's change the fundamental assumptions that we live with. Let's change the fundamental assumption about science or technology, or about the human spirit, or something about the way the world works.
Yeah.
And think about that for a while. That there must be something about that attracts me, because you're right, it's not all fantasy. I've written
Yeah.
I've written kind of all around in the speculative fiction space. I just love it. There's a great essay by Michael Moorcock, and I forget the title, and I forget exactly when it was published, and I forget where it was published. So this is terrible, but I'm also going to have to paraphrase it. But I think this is like in the 60s, and he's writing in one of the sort of sci-fi magazines of the day, and he quoted a reviewer which said, Michael Moorcock's characters are shallow or something, and he said the reviewer misses the point. When you're writing science, I think science fiction was probably the words he used. When you're writing science fiction, the setting itself is the character, right? And there's in other words, the assumptions that you're changing, the ideas you're playing with, are in fact in a sense, that is the protagonist.
Yeah.
So I don't know, something about that is interesting to me. Maybe it's as simple as I really loved Tolkien and have spent the rest of my life trying to find Tolkien. Many people did this. Many writers got started writing basically Tolkien fan fiction for book 1, and then finding their own voice when they were forced to come up with something different for the sequel.
I know when I was a teen, Tolkien, that was what triggered me to become an avid reader, and eventually sparked my interest in writing fantasy. But like you, I also write thrillers. I write science fiction, and so I'm right there with you. It's like, and I'm not sure why, but those are the genres that I tend to lean towards and enjoy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's interesting. I've never been asked that question. Probably because people who have been asking it, interviewing me, are usually themselves, were usually in some kind of context, like a Comic-Con, where everybody assumes that the appropriate thing for people to like is science fiction and fantasy. Yeah, good question.
So, you had this success as both a writer and an editor. Do you prefer one over the other?
Oh, I see myself principally as a writer, 100%. So that doesn't mean that editing is just to pay the bills. What I mean is, let's say money ceased to be an object, right? And like literally the question was, you can do whatever you want, or Dave, you've got 6 months to live. You can complete 6 months worth of projects. What projects are you gonna complete? They aren't gonna be editing projects. They just
Yeah.
won't. I'll tell my writers, hey, sorry, I'm dead in 6 months. I'm going to Aruba. I have 2 books I need to finish. That will be it. Or another way, put it this way, how do I want people to think about me when I'm gone? I mean, I guarantee you, right? Nobody is going to go, that that prospectus disclosure we worked on in 2000 to do our public offering. Dave was really great with that. He really changed my life, right? No one is going to say that. No one is ever going to say, man, that class where Dave helped me understand the difference between gross and net profit, revelatory. It really, really changed my life. Even if it can, by the way, even if I could actually unlock somebody's career for it, no one's going to remember me that way, right? So what I would want is people to say, man, that guy, he was a weirdo. He dressed funny, looked like a troll, but he wrote some books that really made a difference to me, that really, helped me at some moment in my life, or showed me something I hadn't noticed that mattered, right? So it would be writing. Now, editing, there's some great stuff about editing. Being an editor, like being a writer, is to be a kind of public intellectual, somebody who is in this out in the space of ideas, choosing what ideas to communicate and trying to reach people with those ideas. And that's great. Even better than that, being an editor is a way to help other writers. There are a lot of people out there who offer to help other writers. Mostly they want to charge them. And sort of, and I have experienced trying to get into publishing, trying to get books published as an unknown writer. And it's, there's like a fairy tale castle and it's surrounded by an impenetrable wall of thorns. And like there's all this advice, it doesn't seem to work. You sort of try to talk to people and they clearly don't want to talk to you. They just want you to go away. And that's true whether they're editors or you reach out to agents and you guys, man, shouldn't you be looking for new writers? And the answer is yes, but like still it's very hard to figure out, how do I approach the agent? How do I have a human conversation? How do I move forward? So one of the great things about being an editor is you can be the person that says, look, here's the way through the hedge. Here's how this stuff works. Here's what you're probably doing that is causing you to fail to connect with publishers, right? Or even agents. So that's actually great. That's cool. If I can, I'm now in a position where I can do that and in fact get paid for it. So like that's cool. So David F. Sharrod and I are both going to Superstars of Writing next week and be at LTW the week after to talk to writers. So I see myself as a writer. I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing for
Yeah.
other writers who want to get published by Ark. I think you should understand that the entire editorial team at Ark Press are all writers, actually. And we get it and we want to help you. And we can't help everybody as much as we like, but we really want to help you.
That's awesome. In fact, I want to talk to you a little bit more about that. But before I do that,
Yeah.
you talked about advice. And sometimes that advice isn't useful.
Yeah.
But what advice would you give, aspiring writers to help them succeed? And I know there's a lot of answers to that, but
Yeah. So I think that most writing advice comes with some kind of caveat or limitation.
mhm,
The big caveat or limitation is that a lot of writers actually don't know what they're doing. A lot of them don't know why they have succeeded, or can't really even on a craft level, can't really articulate what they're doing. So don't listen too much to writers. The- There's a I can't remember. I need to look up who said this, but it was Anne McCaffrey or Patricia McKillip or somebody, some kind of 70s, 80s sci-fi fantasy writer, said there is no wrong way to write a novel that results in a finished novel. And I think that's right. And similarly, I would say, like, there's no wrong way to write that results in successfully connecting with the reader, you know? So most craft kind of suggestions is somebody saying, well, this is how I think I'm doing it. And then you kind of look at it and go, well, is that what they're doing? Okay. Do I think that will work for me? And then you experiment and you see how it goes, you know? So so on a lot of kind of in a lot of conversations, this makes me sound like a nihilist. You know, I mean, I believe in craft. I just don't think there are right answers necessarily, right? I think there are good answers, there's good advice, and there's bad advice. There's clearly wrong answers. It's often things that are proposed as the right answer, I think, are just a good answer. There are two things that I really believe in, though, and the first is that you tell the truth. You tell the truth, even when it's hard. You tell the truth. I'll give you an example. Okay, George Orwell, 1950, is it 54? He publishes the novel 1984,
Mm-hmm.
which is about a repressive state which oppresses people's sort of soul, tries to really control mankind by controlling language and history, constantly rewriting history and changing the content of words, right? Now, which is great. It's genius. He was right. By the way, George Orwell was one of the great English stylists ever. He wrote a wonderful book. I forget what it's called, but it's on something like politics in the English language or something, which is precisely about the technique of writing exactly what you mean and not something euphemistic because you're bending to uh, political pressure. You're trying to um, meet a political standard of some kind. But here is like the truth-telling side of this, okay? Orwell was a socialist. He was a man of the left, okay? He, as a young man for a few years, was a colonial policeman in the British Empire, but he fought with he was with the left in Spain. He spent a year, he wrote a book called Down and Out in Paris and London, where he went and just kind of took odd jobs and moved around and lived not homelessly, but like almost homelessly, like living like a poor person
Mm-hmm.
in Paris and London and writing about it, right? He was a socialist, he was a man of the left. The name of the oppressive party state in 1984 is INGSOC, which means English socialism. And he was a man of the left and he was a teller of truth. And he was a teller of truth enough to say, it is my people. It is my people who should be believers with me, right? That are going down this terrible, terrible road. Tell the truth, you know, use symbols that are meaningful and real to you. There are a whole bunch of I think we feel I'm going to say something I have not said before, so I'm going to have to sort of find my way towards this articulation here. I think we feel in modern literature like there's a deficit, like we aren't saying things that are important enough. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we intuitively feel that the problem is that poets in the old sense, poets who were sort of servants of the muse and who wrote true things with a capital T as a sacred occupation, are gone. And I think one of the ways we try to fill those gaps or to try to, how do we get that back, is we see people writing in mythology at the child level. It's the Rick Riordan, okay, and the Rick Riordan imitators and the Rick Riordan presents, and right. Rick Riordan writing about Greek mythology, Rick Riordan writing about Scandinavian mythology, Rick Riordan writing about Egyptian mythology. Okay, at the adult level, it's Neil Gaiman doing the same thing. Okay, the problem is that is a false coin. That is you writing in somebody else's mythology that you don't really take seriously anyway. Neil Gaiman has never felt the terror of Odin or the battlefield exaltation of Thor. It's intellectual games for him, right? Same for Rick Riordan. So like the true poet works in his own mythology. The true poet works and whatever that means for you, right? The thing one, tell the truth, say things that matter, use symbols that matter to you. That means you have to sort of write, you take away the euphemism, you take away the irony, you step away from all the layers, the shields that stand between you and the subject and between you and the audience, and you try and say truth and accept the fact that you will take blows as a result. The thing one, tell the truth. And thing two that I really believe in for writing advice is don't quit. I know so many more people who did it for a while, then left because, it made an okay return, but I can make more money somewhere else. Or, and I can't tell you how many guys I know who were told they were going to be the next Rick Riordan, the next Brandon Sanderson, the publisher, the agent. You're going to be huge. We're getting you the great cover artist and the this and the that, and then I didn't sell enough. We're done. And so and you didn't even finish your series. Like your epic fantasy series ends after book 2, right? I've seen this again and again and again in trad pub. I've seen it in indie. Guys who launch saying, I'm gonna be the next Brandon Sanderson in indie. You get one book out and you're like, oh, and you sell 40 copies, and then you're like, yeah, I'm out, right? Don't quit. Don't quit when you have bad reviews. Don't quit when you get dumped by your agent. Don't quit when your publisher folds or orphans your book. Don't quit. Those are the only two things I really, really believe in, Ken.
I love that because I really resonate with both of those. Being a writer, it's difficult. It's a very competitive market, and you're going to get rejection. You're going to get a lot of rejections, and hopefully you figure out what you need to do better. But I've been doing this for 30 years. And I started off writing fantasy myself. I've had success with picture books, but I still haven't had the success I want, with novels, but I could have quit a long time ago. But, you have to really want it if you're going to succeed. And that means not quitting. So,
yeah, 100%. I respect that so much. Right now I'm reading a book for Ark. I'm a writer who has been talking to me for a couple of years. And at one point, I asked him about his career, and he told me a story. Kind of like you've told me, kind of like my career is. And it's, I've been working at this for 20 years, and he had a big trad press deal, and the first book sold great, but then after book 1, they didn't sell so well, and so then they stopped publishing him. And he's been in the indie space since. Some kid stuff, some adult stuff. And I recited it all back to him, and I said, tell me one thing. Why have you not quit? And he said, I love it. I think it's important. This is the thing I want to do. And I was like, okay, I'll read your novel. Like, I get that. I understand that.
And I think it comes back to what you said before about making a difference. That's why you write. And to me, it's the same thing. It's like, I want to make a difference,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, 100%. Even like the magic of books is, right? It could be 200 years after you're dead. We read books. I think someone asked on Twitter last week, what's the oldest work of fiction you read? And people were like, Mansfield Park or whatever. And I said, I think The Tale of Sinuhe and The Tale of the Shipwrecked Sailor, which are both like something like 1600 or 1800 BC,
Mm-hmm.
right? These are Egyptian stories. They are novels. We have fiction. It's not myth in the sense that it's not directly stories about the Egyptian gods. It's novels. The Tale of Sinuhe is about this courtier who the king is murdered, and he's, oh, I'm in trouble because the king's brother doesn't like me, so he flees and he lives with, goes out and lives like Lawrence of Arabia. He goes and lives with Bedouin in the desert, and until they come, the palace kind of sends for him and says,
Yeah.
"Hey, we don't hate you, come back." Right? This is a novel. It's almost 4,000 years old. That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
That can happen is the magic of literature.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't read back that far, but Iliad and
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce it. Odysseus. Those are
Yeah.
some of my favorites. And
Yeah.
so, anyways,
Yeah. And that's almost 3,000 years old, right? I mean, it's hard to know if they were originally oral.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what the thinking is these days on exactly when the siege of Troy happened, but I think it's something like 1200 BC or something, right? So you're getting back there, yeah, thousands of years old.
yeah. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. You're just like you mentioned 4 weeks ago. You started Ark Press, and
Yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
I'm excited about the new innovative perspective you're taking on
Yeah.
publishing. Talk a little bit about that. How you separate yourselves or stand out from other traditional publishers.
Yeah. This is a good question. One is, well, probably several things. One thing is that we think that traditional publishing has been underserving male readers for maybe a long time, but certainly in the last decade or so, or so. And you don't have to imagine any kind of nefarious motivation for that. All you have to know is that the power reader, the people who read the most books are middle-aged women. And and that reading demographic can take Twilight and make a giant hit out of it. Or if they decide that they want to read young adult novels for a while, like they can make giant hits out of young adult novels. And if they
Yeah,
want to read 50 Shades of Grey, tens of millions of copies. And so from a financial point of view, it may very well serve a publisher to chase that demographic, right? And
yeah,
so and so you see a lot of very feminine looking covers in fantasy, and you see the genre of romantasy. Oh, it's all, everyone wants to be publishing big romantasies these days. And I'm gonna go out on a limb. This is a crazy little limb. And I think a lot of men are not reading romantasy. Like, oh yeah, I can't, man. The best thing about this is all of the sweeping feelings from when the relationship finally resolves, right? Like, I just don't think that's true. So, and I don't think we can make it true either. I don't think we can just change human nature. So we want to serve potentially all readers, but we want to make really sure that we're not leaving behind male readers. And the way to do that is to sort of look for books where like, will men like this? Yes.
yeah,
Hey, hopefully also will women like this? Hopefully, right? But like we're gonna focus on, we're gonna err on the side of appealing to male readers. Uh, we publish now, partly that will include potentially at least publishing genres that are interesting to men. So we're interested in looking at thrillers. We'd be interested in a good Western. If someone showed up who said, listen, I can, who we liked his stuff, and he said, hey, I want to deliver you one Western a year, we'd be like, great, do it. So probably most of what we'll do, the majority of what we'll do is probably going to be science fiction and fantasy.
hmm
So thing one, looking for the male reader. Thing two, we are not woke. We're not going to be woke. We're not trying to attack people who are. We don't care if you want to have pronouns in your bio, but we won't. We're not ever going to say, oh, we are looking for writers with X, Y, and Z intersectionalities. We don't care. We don't care about your intersectionalities one way or the other, right? In fact, I mean, I'm going to say something that's going to sound like it's contrary to conventional wisdom, but in recent years, publishers have and agents, therefore, editors and agents have been very excited about identity politics stuff. And you've seen people post, "Oh, I'm really looking for the next great epic fantasy by a BIPOC writer or by a this or by a that. I'd really like to see, trans identity explored in a science fiction setting or something." And so writers, I think, be very, very justified in thinking, "Oh, what I need to do in my query letter is say, my intersectionalities and write a book about intersectionality stuff." I think there are a lot of reasons why that is a terrible idea. Forget about Ark. I think there are a lot of reasons why that is a terrible idea. I think that, your query letter says, "I am X, Y, and Z." Okay. First of all, I, as an editor, worry immediately that you think that's what's going to sell the book and that the story doesn't give you confidence. You're not confident that the story will do it. Second, I, as an editor, might be, now this is probably a rare thing in traditional publishing in recent years, but not unheard of. I might actually not be totally bought into the whole identity politics thing. And so as you telling me that you're XYZ, you might be like, another one of those. Even if I am bought in, you say I'm X, Y, and Z, I might go, "Oh, that's amazing. I've got one of those already. Good luck." Someone else is still looking for an Armenian crossdresser. Okay. I've got one. Also, and I have seen this, when you go to, I've seen writers who get agents or editors on the basis of identity on some level. And then the agent or the editor wants to restrict their career to that identity. Okay. I had a friend, she's gay. She wrote a science fiction erotica novel. Okay. Picked up by an agent. He's very excited. Couldn't sell it. Then she said, "Here's this next thing I want to go out to editors with. It's a young adult." And he said, "Yeah, I'm not interested in that." He said, "Why not?" He said, "Well, I want you to write more gay erotica. That's what I want you to do." Right. And he was only willing to represent her with that. Well, that wasn't all that she wanted to write. She wanted to write lots of stuff. She, in fact, had written that as sort of a like, "This idea has been bugging me. It's crazy. I'm just going to do it." Blah, right? But she had to dump him because that is the only thing he would represent her for. He wanted, "You be my gay writer. You be my gay writer on this gay writer reservation. No, you don't get it right, YA. That's somebody else." "Oh, is it gay YA? What? No, it's gay. It's like YA paranormal. Nobody's gay. So nope, sorry." So you can box yourself in. You don't want to be the the Presbyterian writer, the Armenian writer. You want to be just the writer, right? You want to be a writer who writes great novels, not the person who's going to produce in this narrow political vein. So the truth is, I think it was always a bad idea to try and sell yourself on the basis of your intersectionalities. I think that whatever your politics are, I think that's a terrible idea. It's a self-limiting move. I know it has not seemed that way.
Yeah.
But I think that's true. But certainly, we don't care about your intersectionalities. Like there is exactly one scenario when I want you to tell me your intersectionalities, and it is the following. My novel is about a demon that is stalking the gay nightclub scene of Atlanta. The owner of a gay nightclub, who is also a trans woman, former member of the Atlanta PD, tries to trap and hunt the demon, right? If in that pitch letter you say, "By the way, I am a trans woman, former member of the Atlanta PD, and I own a gay nightclub," that is useful information because that tells me you know the subject matter of the story, right? Otherwise, I just don't care. Don't. I'm not trying to collect people. I'm not counting noses for anything, race, religion, sexuality. I don't care, right? If it happens that all of my writers are trans men, well, that's weird. I don't expect that, but like, so be it, right? What I want are books that I love, that I think are telling truth, that I think are gonna reach people and help them. So this is a lot of words, but so the second thing I would say, so one, I think we're leaning toward, we want to make sure we capture male readers, serve. We want to make sure we serve male readers. Two, we're not interested in woke doctrines. We're just not. Three, we have a motto. And the motto is the humans win in the end. We are pro-human. That doesn't mean we're not willing to look at like a dystopian novel. A dystopian novel can be profoundly pro-human, like 1984 or Brave New World. They are warning us of bad turns we should not take, right? But we're probably not interested in nihilism or sort of human-hating literature, right? Anything that kind of undermines the cause of humanity as a whole, or portrays us as just animals, or denies morality, right? We're not interested in. There are probably other differences. The truth is we haven't figured them all out yet. I'm not quite sure if it's a spectrum, and it may not be a spectrum. If it's a spectrum that goes from traditional publishing to self-publishing, right? And like sort of small and indie presses are somewhere in here. Maybe spectrum's not the right metaphor, but if it is a spectrum, I'm not sure where we're going to fall.
Yeah.
I think we will end up with books in bookstores. It's not clear to me that's particularly desirable.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because you have a different business model, and people listening might not be aware of that business model of direct publishing. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, it turns out that in the traditional publishing model, there are a bunch of people who are not the author and not the publisher who take money. And in fact, who take together, they take more than half the money. So in the traditional publishing model, 40% goes to Barnes and Noble. Okay, goes to the bookstore. Another 20%. So if a book sells for $30, $12 goes to Barnes and Noble, right? Another 20%, which is to say $6, goes to the distributor who holds the book in a warehouse, makes it available, right? They don't print. They're just a middleman. They have a warehouse basically. But that only leaves 40%, right? So if a book sells for $30, that means there's only $12 to go to the author and publisher. And by the way, it costs $5 to print it. There's only $7. And on the $7, you got to run the business and you got to pay the author. And it turns out that that's not very much.
Yeah.
So along comes Amazon, okay? And like others like Amazon, but Amazon's the big one everybody knows, right? And says, "Oh, you don't need those guys. I'll be the bookstore and I'll be the middleman for you." Okay. Amazon will even print if you want. So Amazon can get your book to readers. It reaches more people than Barnes and Noble does, right? That's all great. Amazon takes less than the 60%, but they still take a big chunk. Okay.
Mm.
In fact, the smallest chunk they take, so you can do what's called fulfillment by seller, okay, which is to say, hey, you have your own warehouse. I print the book. Amazon just acts like the bookstore. They're just the bookstore. They're not the distributor. So they go out there and they have the landing page. Someone sees it, says, yes, Amazon, I want to buy that book. Amazon says, here you go. Here's an order. But you, the publisher, warehouse it, you ship it, okay? Amazon charges you $10 for sending you that order. Okay. So that's better than the $18 that the bookstore plus the distributor charge, right? By the way, you're paying for the warehouse. So you take out the printing and the Amazon, and you've got $15 instead of $7, but you've also got to pay for a warehouse, right? So it turns out that if you can reach an audience, and you can help them understand this, and you can say, listen, if you buy it directly from us, then we have more money to pay the author with. We have more, then we can throw cooler parties. We can help the author sell more because we have more money for marketing, right? And so, look, we don't even have books published yet. We only know for sure a small number of the books that are going to come out from us next year. But I think what we're going to do is lean into direct sales for this reason. We can print really pretty books, not cheap print-on-demand paperbacks. We can be in a partnership with the authors that's good for the authors. They can make good money, and it's just better all around. The better we can cut out everybody, including Amazon, the better off we and our authors are, right? So that is the headspace we want to go to. The details we are still working out. That's the conceptual. That's the target. So this is why, even though we don't even have our authors signed up yet, we're already out in social media talking about this stuff, doing spaces on X, trying to kind of build a community and get people to, because we want to be able to talk directly to readers.
Great. So how will readers find out about you?
Yeah. We think we will be on Amazon, inevitably. We think we will be on probably also in bookstores. But I think it's going to be a lot of social media and probably other kinds of marketing as well. So for sure, one of the things that's interesting to us, this is true for any publisher, right? Any publisher or our agent who is talking to you about picking you up is going to ask, among other things, well, what's your social media presence like, or what kind of, might not be social media, if you were Jake Tapper, right? Didn't Tapper publish a thriller like 2 years ago? CNN news anchor, right? I published a thriller, I think, in 2021 or something. So 100% part of the reason he got the book deal is because he's Jake Tapper. And like, he is on, you can love him or hate him, it doesn't matter. Like, he is on the show that gets seen by millions of people. People know who he is, right? The publishers obviously knew that, and they obviously cared, right? So this is of interest to us too. We're interested in people who have audiences that they talk to, who have audiences that they can influence, right? I love to get writers who are already in such communication with their audiences, they can say, hey, listen, my book's out, and it makes a difference where you buy it. Come over to the company's website and buy it direct, and let's cut out the middleman together, right? So that does not mean we're going to rely entirely on the writers for promotion, right? We will be putting up a YouTube channel soonish. We should be posting pretty frequently to that, and we'll be trying to reach out to all the booktuber channels and get people kind of informed and expecting stuff to start coming from us.
Awesome. What about writers? If they want to submit to you, what do you suggest they do?
Yeah, so to be able to get to people's books in a timely fashion, we need to be able to get to fast decisions. And what that means, candidly, is we have to be able to quickly decide that some books are not good for us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what we're asking people to do is prepare something like this is long been the practice in nonfiction, but a book proposal. It's not so different from a query letter. So typically in fiction, you get a query letter, and then it attaches 10 pages of the manuscript, and may I send you the rest, right?
Yeah.
So we have a memo actually on our, which we'll get up on our website right now. Where it is if writers want to see it now and want to submit now, I say, look, you can. Ark does not have a Discord server, but I have a Discord server, and it has an Ark channel. You can come join my Discord server. Pinned at the top of the channel we have a memo, a 3-page memo, how to write a book proposal. In a nutshell, it's give us the query letter, the kind of 1 or 2 paragraphs. Oh, get interested, and then tell us the whole story. like not trying to hook us. Like tell us the actual ending so we know that you know how to end a book.
Yeah.
But not long, a short couple pages. And then other information like, tell us about your social media presence. Who do you know who might blurb the book? What is your bio, right? And then give us a writing sample, which if the manuscript is written, which hopefully it is, it's probably just the first chapter of the manuscript, right? So that's what we're looking for. I got a memo that lays it out. Ken, is this getting posted on YouTube? Is that where this is going?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll generate a 7-day invitation. I'll send it to you if you want to just post it in the
Okay.
description. If people watch this and they're like, I want to go. Again, it's my Discord server. It's full of writers. That's who's in there. And there's a channel called Ark Press Announcements, I think, and it's pinned at the top of that. And
Okay.
then the answer is for now you email that to me. We're gonna get a submission widget up soon on the website, but you email butler@ark.press and I will get it into the queue.
Awesome. Great. We've talked about a lot of things. Anything else you want to say before we close?
No, Ken, I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. This has been great. Thanks so much, Dave. Appreciate it.